You might know that one of the most basic parts of estate planning is having a will. Do you have one in place, though? Has it been updated? And is this document enough as far as your assets are concerned? Here with some answers is Cory Sickles, the owner of Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, in this sponsored segment. Welcome back, Cory.
Glad to be here, Robin.
All right, so we talk about a will. I feel like you always hear that term, right? That's the one that you're most familiar with, maybe. But is that enough? Is a will, the end-all, be-all, okay, I'm done, my wishes will be granted?
You know the odd part about all this is if you ask, I have clients or I have prospects come in and they'll say, oh, I got a will, everything's good.
I'm fine.
Right. And what they don't realize is 100% of wills go through to the probate process. And the question really is how do you actually have all your accounts set up to make sure you avoid probate? And, a lot of times things change in life, right?
Yeah.
People pass away and your will might maybe remarry. Your will might actually go to your new spouse, but you forgot to change that pension or that 401k or some other account to remove your old spouse from that, and that will actually go to that person. They don't even look at a will in certain aspects of it.
Okay, so that stands, and that's the
Right.
issue. Okay, and then when you talk about do the assets always go to the people they're intended to, is that in that regard, or are there other reasons it might not go where you wanted it to?
Well, I mean, obviously, depending on the situation, family, there could be a lot of family dynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, people can challenge wills, and if that's the case, they'll go through a process there. But when you look at your houses, you look at bank accounts, you look at all your investment accounts, life insurance. It's whoever you have on that beneficiary form that overrides a will.
Okay, gotcha.
And it even overrides
Yeah.
a trust on that aspect as well. So that's why it's so important when you meet with your advisor every year to see if anything needs to be updated, because things do change.
And things fall through the cracks, like you mentioned, like a checking account you might not even think about, right? Like that is something that's not maybe part of your
Right.
assets that you consider important. So then there it is sitting at the end of the day, and you're saying it goes through probate.
And I will say this, one of the bank accounts are awful because in some cases everyone's going out there they're throwing money here and there because they got a good deal on a CD.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't put beneficiary on that, and that could actually go right through the probate process. And it's just time and money that some people don't have the time to wait for.
Exactly. All right. The other word we hear about is trust. And sometimes I think it's hard for people to differentiate what is needed in a trust. What kind of assets should I have in order to put together a trust? Can you kind of explain that and explain where those might come in handy for folks?
Yeah. The easiest concept is this. 100% of wills go through probate. 0% of trusts go through the probate process. Now, you still have to set up your accounts the right way to avoid probate, but if you're working with a financial advisor, you're working with an attorney, we're going to make sure that you actually, I know at Safe Harbor, we're going to make sure that you're going to be able to avoid that process. And it's going to go the way that you want it to. And there's other provisions you can put in there. Wills go lump sum if you want to be able to limit money. And if you have children, or if you have someone on a disability, you definitely want to have a trust to be able to protect those assets.
Okay, and I think you can make, different kind of like orders for where you want your stuff to go to in trust. Is that true, that you may have a little more control?
Well, you do control that, right?
Yeah.
For example, you have a 9-year-old, right?
Yeah, I have two
So you have a
kids, yeah.
9-year-old. If something happened to both, you and your husband, you don't want the 9-year-old to be able to actually receive that. That's why you have it go to a trust. Maybe they don't get it until they're 25
right,
or 30
you can make
or
those
35.
stipulations.
And you can't really do that with a will. So that's where that trust comes into play.
Okay, all right, Cory, being proactive about all this, as we mentioned with anything financially, is always the best route. Talking about death, trying to think about the worst case scenario causes people to not do any of this. Is that a struggle that you see all the time?
The one thing I would say is this. If you don't have a will or trust in place today, do it. It's a lot easier to lay out what you want to do. Later on in life, or maybe you have terminal illness or something like that.
Yeah.
People want to put that off because now it's like a finality, and you just don't want to experience that. So the best time to be able to do it is today, while you're healthy, you can make sure, you can always change it.
Yeah.
But at least put something in writing so it's going to go the way that you want it to go.
Yeah, so you're of sound mind while you make these decisions. And you talk about the team at Safe Harbor Wealth Advisors, and that really is kind of the crux of all of this, is that sometimes we may think of one thing financially but not another, and all of this is part of your kind of comprehensive plan, right?
It is, whether it's Medicare, whether it's taxes, whether it's financial on my standpoint, or whether it's estate planning. You know, being a registered investment advisor, that's our goal. Or, one of the things that we have to do is put together the right type of plan for you and be a fiduciary, and estate planning is a big part of that.
It definitely is. All right, you have 2 locations. We talk about this, right? You are in Easton and in Dublin. Yep. So if somebody wants to meet with you, you can still do virtual if they prefer that way, but just sitting down and kind of hashing this all out, making sure somebody else is crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and all that.
Yep.
Okay, Cory with Safe Harbor, thank you.
Thank you.